Are you ready?
Ready.
All right, let's go. Kevin here, top 100 financial advisor and best-selling author. We are here to talk about the stock market. Today, we need to talk about the top 10 most cash-heavy companies. And that's because companies that have cash in times of uncertainty, and last I checked, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market, can be one of the best investments you can make because they are a little bit more nimble. So we're going to talk about that today. And we're going to use this list here that was compiled by Financial Friends. Feel free to follow him on all his social channels, and he has a YouTube channel as well. So we're going to use this list to kind of go through each of the 10, and I'll show you of the 10 which ones I would prefer to invest in the most and which ones I may or may not be currently holding, and kind of how I feel about each of these companies. Now you guys have it up on the screen. I'm going to have to look at my computer for these. Again, these are the top 10 that have the most cash. When we say cash, this is on their balance sheet, just basically in cash, but it's essentially sitting in like a checking or a savings account. And the benefit of doing that in a time like this is that, number one, if you have this much cash laying around, you can fund your company and keep things moving in times of uncertainty. So when interest rates are going up, guess who doesn't have to take out a loan as much, right? You have other companies that are down significantly. 9 times out of 10, go look at their balance sheet. You're about to have a lot of loans. Those loans will get more expensive. It's harder to get more access and to continue to grow when you don't have cash. But if you are sitting on $21.9 billion, you're like, hey, I don't need a loan from the bank. I've got this war chest of cash that I can use right now that I don't need to take out loans. Basically have an emergency savings. You're not as pressed. You're not as worried when you have a pretty large savings. Now, the other part of this too is you can also make more moves and make more investments that can set you up for the future as well, which also includes buying up other companies and buying up other assets. One great example here is Amazon. Remember, Amazon bought, what was it, iRobot, the Roomba company. They bought MGM a few years ago. Like, they're going out and buying a lot of these things because they have the cash to do that, which means that whether it's now in 2022 or 2023 or something that can really pay off in the next 4 or 5 years, the money that you have gives you the possibility to do that now and set yourself up for the future when everybody else is worrying about inflation, when everybody else is worrying about higher interest rates, so on and so forth. So this puts them in a position of power. Now, the downside to this, and there's someone's like, well, if they have cash, they're not investing it. And that is a fair case. The other side of this is, hey, look, if you're sitting on this money, you're not investing this money. If you're not investing this money, you might not be growing. That is a fair case too. But again, I am couching this and circling this under in times of uncertainty, right? And because interest rates are going up and because things are a little iffy, I think this is a better area to pay attention to than what it may have been, let's say in 2018 when interest rates were cheap, right? Back then, it's like, hey, you can get a loan if you need to, if you run out of cash or run low, but you should be investing, right? Especially back then. Now the time to say, look, I might want to see what's out there, right? See what I can acquire. Another quick example as I continue, and I'm not suggesting Amazon do this, but let's say if Amazon were to go out and acquire Roku, I think that would pair really well with their Amazon Echo or Amazon Echo, the Alexa device, which is also Amazon Echo, and your vacuum. Just imagine turning on your TV, telling your TV or your speaker to turn on TV and the robot to vacuum and do all that kind of stuff. It's possible. And they also have a streaming service. What if you bought Roku and it just comes right with it, right? So it's just a really quick example. But again, Amazon, who has, $34.9 billion, you might be able to do that, right? Whereas a Disney may not be able to because they don't have that much cash available, or not as much as Amazon. So that's just a quick example. So let's go through these and then I'll tell you which ones that I absolutely like and would invest in and why. So starting off at the bottom, you got Johnson & Johnson at $11.3 billion. It's a solid stock, but do remember that they are splitting the company. Last I checked, they were splitting into 3 different divisions, I think. Maybe 2 to 3 different divisions. I know one was going to be healthcare. No, it was going to be like diapers and like consumer goods. I don't know where that process is. So that one's up in the air. The stock is relatively solid given the context of 2022. But you got Johnson & Johnson. Then you move up to Visa at $14 billion. Interesting because its other competitors, American Express, which I do own, MasterCard, they're not on this list. So it's just interesting how Visa has kind of separated itself, even though its performance isn't the most amazing thing in the world, but we'll get to that in a bit. You've got Tesla here at $19.5 billion. Another interesting one, interesting in the fact that, again, for a relatively new automaker to have this much money sitting on the side is interesting, right, compared to a Ford and GM. Tesla has really made up a lot of ground very quickly. I think this is what makes Tesla so famous. The other side of this is in terms of performance, I'm still a little concerned because, and Elon has tweeted this as well, he's had to sell off a lot of his Tesla shares, and Tesla has fallen to a significant degree this year to fund his Twitter exploits and everything else. And the more he sells of Tesla, because he's the largest shareholder, that could push the value of the stock down. So that is something that I would be concerned about. Next here, we've got Google at 21.9 billion. Then you go to Microsoft at 22.8, and then you have Apple at 23.6. Now, all three of these companies I do own. I own Tesla as well, and Berkshire Hathaway and Amazon. We'll get to those. But for Apple, Microsoft, and Google, this is one of the reasons why I'm so confident in continuing to invest in them, even though they're down and they're in the tech space, as opposed to others who don't have this much money and doesn't have this much power and legacy. When I say power, I mean like market share. When you Google stuff, you Google it. You don't use Bing, even though Microsoft is still here on this list. But you guys get the point here. They are all three extremely dominant powers that have the cash to go and acquire. For example, Microsoft is buying Activision. There's some conflict there. We'll see if that deal is going to go through. But in either case, they had the power to say, look, I already own Xbox. I already own the PC market. I'm going to go out and buy Activision so I can pull this into my game house and continue to do that kind of thing. I don't remember if they bought Discord or not, but that was something that was at least in consideration to do that. Again, the point here is they have the power because they have more than $20 billion to do that. Same with Apple. Apple is extremely well managed from a financial aspect or financial side of things. And even though they're dealing with some supply chain issues in China, not that they should just automatically build a factory tomorrow, which they can't do because it takes a while. They've got the cash to do that. If they say, look, things are very complicated in China. We want to build another plant somewhere else in the US or anywhere else in the world to smooth the supply chain out. Guess who has the money to attempt that and to start that process? Apple does, because they have more than $20 billion sitting on the sideline, allowing them to do that and allow them to kind of navigate this particular situation when it comes to what we are expecting and what may or may not happen in the market. Also, it makes it easier for all of these companies, and not that they do pay dividends, but it does make it easier to pay dividends, because as an investor, I can say, hey, I know y'all got the money, which means I know I'm going to have my dividends coming in, which means I'm going to continue to hold the stock. So that is something that's possible too. Again, not every company that's on this list pays dividends. Amazon is an example of that. Next, here's ExxonMobil, $30.4 billion. Exxon has done incredibly well for a lot of obvious reasons. I have heard some rumblings, and we've kind of seen that oil stocks have taken a little bit of a hit in the last few days or so. It's hard to call where oil is going to go because it's so complex. It's not a normal market where it's just supply and demand or just supply chain. There's OPEC, which is a cartel, which they do what they want to do outside the law, right? And decide what they want to do with oil prices. So it's very difficult to say where oil prices are going to go. But we do know that, one, Exxon has a lot of momentum, right? Because of the Russia-Ukraine situation, but also it's getting cold. People are going to spend more money on energy, and ExxonMobil is a beneficiary of that. And this is what started the oil run last year. Right around this time, a lot of oil stocks, Oxy Petroleum being one of them, started to take off around this time of the year, which is normal. Like, I just got my fireplace fixed, and I believe it runs on natural gas. I use it, right? Because we like the fireplace. So that's not going to be something that's new. So all energy tends to do quite well right around this time as things start to get colder. But ExxonMobil, sitting on $30.4 billion, makes them a major player in this space. Next one's Berkshire Hathaway, $32 billion that Warren Buffett has been buying up. Different companies, we've talked about some of the ones that he's been buying as well. They're solid. I don't really need to go too deep into Berkshire Hathaway. We've done several videos about them in the past. And this is one of the things that, it's what Warren Buffett is known for, sitting on cash and knowing exactly when to invest in certain things, which he has been doing. Taiwan Semiconductor was a video that we did the other day, which is one of the companies that he bought recently to add to his portfolio. So I like watching what he does. Right now, he's sitting on $32.6 billion, which is in the top 3, which is kind of crazy to think about. And when you start to add up different companies, like, it is the entire value of Lyft, Uber, Snapchat, and several other companies just in cash, which is wild to think about, that he has that much money just sitting in cash that is worth billions of dollars more than entire companies that are listed on the stock market today. So interesting fact for the day. Next is Amazon at $34.9 billion. Now, Amazon has made a lot of acquisitions. We'll see if those acquisitions are improved. I am not a big fan of Amazon as an investor because they just have not performed well within the last 2 years now. That's not to say that they can't turn things around. We'll see. But they have gotten quite big, quite expensive, and expensive to keep their operations running. I cannot say, just based on what Amazon has done in the past, say that Amazon cannot, again, turn these things around. But it's just real hard to run all of these different businesses at the same time and control cost in a way that makes sense. I understand Amazon's strategy. Trust me, that's half of business schools understanding what Amazon is doing. However, I needed to go up, right? I needed to act in a way similar to, Apple, Microsoft, and Google. It's like, hey, it's down, but it's starting to go in the right direction. And again, those three, Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple, Microsoft, and Google, Alphabet here, they were great in 2021. They were fine, right? Amazon was not. And again, it's not 6 months. It's not just a year. We're going on year two of some disappointing performance there. So just because they have cash here doesn't make them a great thing to invest in, but they do have a significant amount of cash. Now we move into number one, which is United Healthcare. United Healthcare has $38.8 billion sitting there in cash. And I would venture to say, outside of ExxonMobil, probably the best stock to invest in right now. I'll get into a little bit of which ones I would choose here outside of United Healthcare. Now, if you've been watching these videos for a while and liking and subscribing and commenting, which you should be doing right now, you know that I have been big on insurance for quite a while now. What does United Healthcare do? They are a health insurance provider, which means that you have to pay those premiums. Open enrollment season, all that stuff. You gotta pay it, right? Regardless of what's going on. And if those premiums stay the same, whether they do or don't, again, you have to pay it. It's going to come out of your paycheck anyway. So they're almost guaranteed to get some portion of your money, right? And it's a service that you have to have. Not something you just skip, right? Especially the older you get, you can't just skip it. So United Healthcare has been relatively solid. Now, when I start to look at some of these, and I'm going to pull this up on my screen, so give me 1 second as I switch over. United Healthcare is definitely one of those I would definitely consider investing in. However, I do not believe that it is the best insurance stock out there. I've talked about Progressive, Humana, Cigna. Those are just the ones that Aflac even. Like, I think those will make you more money, but just condensing it to this list, United Healthcare is probably one of the go-tos there. Another here, as I'm looking at the dates, so if I look at the last 6 months, United Healthcare is up 4%. That ain't bad because I'm doing the S&P 500 here. This will not be on the screen because I want to make sure I get this video out early. So compared to the stock market, the S&P 500 is negative 4.8% in the last 6 months compared to where United Healthcare is at up 4%. So there's that. If I look at Johnson & Johnson, Johnson & Johnson is actually down 3% in the last 6 months. So again, not all that exciting. I think the dividend may help you a bit there. And then when I go to Visa is only down 1.79%, as well as Berkshire Hathaway. They're right there over the last 6 months at negative, basically negative 2% if we went around. But take a step back and look at a year, things do change just a bit, where United Healthcare is up 21%, which is a lot more enticing, right? So that is a lot more helpful there. And then you have both Johnson & Johnson and Berkshire Hathaway closer to an 11% gain over the last year. Next, I've got Visa here at up close to 7% over the last year, and then the S&P 500 is negative 13, almost 14% over the last year. So investing for longer periods of time, it tends to be a bit better. That's obvious though. But these companies are relatively large and relatively slow. So I think Berkshire Hathaway almost always makes sense for a long term. United Healthcare, I think, is a solid, slow moving but steady company. I think Visa is fine. Johnson & Johnson is fine, but I'm not super excited about those. The last thing I'll say here is if I'm looking for something that is cheap today and could be extremely valuable When I say tomorrow, I'm talking 2, 3, 4 years down the line. This is, I feel that this is one of those golden opportunities to really continue investing in Apple, in Microsoft, and in Google, because I cannot guarantee this, but I'm very, very confident that those are going to continue their winning ways of the past relatively soon, or sooner rather than later. It's really hard to keep Apple out of the game. It's really hard to keep Google out of the game, even though they do have a bigger competitor in TikTok. But I really don't see those changing or really, moving away from those in the very near future, especially 2, 3, 4 years. These stocks, the entire stock market is not going to stay down forever. And we've also seen since October 1, the market is up double digits. So things are starting to change. I think the discount season for those major companies is limited. They've been falling all year. They're not going to continue to fall for forever. I think this will be the perfect time if you too believe those companies the same way that I do, which you don't have to. It's totally up to you. All right. So those are the ones that I like and would invest in now. On the I have to get something now. I want to get something now. United Healthcare is solid. Berkshire Hathaway is solid. Maybe a Visa. If you are looking at Johnson & Johnson, I would encourage you to figure out where that merger or that really separation is going and where that is. I personally do not know. So Johnson & Johnson would not be on my list. I'm looking towards long term. Apple, Microsoft, Google is where I would really start to look. And obviously, you're trying to make money now. The ExxonMobil is something you probably want to pay attention to as well. I don't really invest in oil. That's just me. All right. So that is our list. Those are the top 10 most cash heavy companies, as well as the companies from that list that I would consider investing in. The last thing, I've got 2 other stocks that you should know about. They weren't on this list, but we have talked about them inside the members only. One of those is what I think is one of the best financial companies that's out there right now. I did an entire breakdown. We got another company. The hint here is that it is tasty. They make products that are very good, and that stock is up more than 20% as well. And I don't feel like enough people are talking about it. So if you want me to talk about that company, let me know in the comments, okay? And make sure that you join our members only. All right, that's it for me. I'll talk to you later. Bye.